Good morning, Book of Face people. It's a little bit before 9, so I shall sip my tea and wait for people to join the live. It is day 4, so for those of you that have trucked along for the whole 4 days, thank you very much. If you just stumbled across this today, if you search the hashtag, go over to the This Chick Means Business Facebook page, search the hashtag Speak Up and Be Visible Challenge, you will be able to catch up on the previous days. This challenge is a visibility challenge. Hi Kaz, hi Kirsten, go to tea. This is a visibility challenge, but this isn't a go do this thing over here and blah, blah, blah. It's looking more inwards about what actually stops us from speaking our truth in our message. So this one is a little bit more PD driven than what some other visibility challenges are. So it's 9 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining today. So I will get stuck into it. For those of you that have registered, you would have got an email this morning reminding you of the call. But at the bottom of the email, there is also a link to a video that I would love you to go and watch. It's not me, it's a spoken word piece by a very, very inspirational lady. I won't spoil it for you. Go and have a look. And if you aren't registered for this challenge, pop me through your email, like my This Chick Means Business page, Law of Reciprocity, bit of an exchange there, and I'll add you to the list after you've emailed me your thing, because there's a bonus audio courage induction that I've recorded for you, and tomorrow, hang on, not tomorrow, today's only Thursday, Saturday I'm going to be doing a bonus coaching session for people who are registered. So stay tuned for that, but you have to be registered to be a part of it. So a very, very quick review. Day 1, we had a look at our fears and our beliefs, and we had a look at the body response and how our body actually can stop us from taking action, wants to keep us safe. And we had a look at the beliefs that we had that kept us, playing small, realistically, and kept us feeling like we had to hide. Then day 2, we had a look at courage and purpose, and we explored our values, both the golden values and the shadow, and we started to link these things together in a way that is going to allow us to own all of ourselves and to find our voice and speak with more confidence. Yesterday we had a look at our core message, and we had a look at perturbation as well. And something that came up for me yesterday in one of the questions, I was, if I can find it in my notes, I was thinking about, where have I lied to myself, which was one of the questions. Or where in my life have I not kept my promise, was the question from yesterday. And I realized back when I was a child and back when I was a teenager, one of the biggest promises I made to myself was that I would never change who I was, that I would always stay the rebel, I would always stay the unique, standout individual that I was in high school. And I realized over time that that had actually gotten diluted. Even the red lipstick, which I used to love wearing in my 20s, I stopped wearing because a guy in a nightclub who I politely rejected basically called me a whore because I was wearing red lipstick. So, always learning, always evolving. One of the purposes of this challenge is for us to rediscover our unique individual self and re-own potentially that part of our identity that we're pushing down so we can conform to the world. So that was something that came out of yesterday for me. So yes, I'm facilitating this today, this challenge, but, even for me, we're always learning. So today, I just want to ask and have a little moment to contemplate, who here has started feeling a bit of a shift? For some people who are commenting in the Facebook group, there's been some very big wow moments. And for me, there's been those little shake your head going, really, Trudy? So back to red lipstick, right? All of the time. But yeah, so the purpose of this is just to gently unravel and unlayer some things before we come to Friday, which will be the defining moment. So today, I wanted to have a look at imposter syndrome. And it's something that gets sort of talked about, bandied about, and hi, Kim. And I think it was definitely something for us to acknowledge within ourselves and to really understand it, because I've heard it sort of thrown around and never really explored just how powerful imposter syndrome is. So I've got a little definition here in my notes that I will read out to you. Imposter syndrome, also known as imposter phenomenon, imposterism, fraud syndrome, or the imposter experience, is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear, which we talked about on Monday, of being exposed as a fraud. And when we were talking about the things that were holding us back earlier in the week, something that did keep coming up in the groups was the judgment, not being enough, being exposed as a fraud. I feel like a fraud was some of the comments. So I'm really glad that I actually brought this up today. So this term imposter syndrome was coined in 1978. And it's described as a feeling of phoniness in people who believe they are not intelligent enough, capable, or creative, despite evidence of high achievement. So basically, it's when you feel inadequate despite your evident success. And I was reviewing my notes for this morning, and I was like, yeah, because even creating this 5-day challenge, I had moments of saying to myself, who's going to want to do this with me? People know me as a business strategist. Nobody knows that I've been studying this stuff for years. And I felt like a fraud, even though 4 years ago now, I did a group coaching program, and I look at the results that the women who went through this have since created in their life. And one lady, she does $10,000 sales days. Now, I'm not taking the credit for that, but that was a starting point for her to then go, hang on, I'm more. So I have the evidence that I'm good at this stuff, but even creating it, and I can look back now and I can see all the little sabotages I put in place when launching this challenge, and I didn't push it enough, I didn't share it enough, all of these little things that speak of the self-sabotage and the imposter syndrome. So it happens to all of us. And guess what? It's okay, because the first step in moving past any of this stuff is identifying it and going, hey, yeah, you know what? I've got that little talky voice that pops up in my head and tells me that I can't do things. So, like the post or love the post if you've ever had that little voice make you question your own ability, in spite of your evidence that you are actually freaking brilliant, right? So, it's one of those things, and I was talking about with the shadow values, is that when you can look at it and laugh at it, you're on your way to making friends with it and being able to work through it and overcome it. There is that saying, new level, same devil. So these things do, have the ability to keep popping up in your life. But when you know about it, that's the first step to being able to overcome it. Because here we are doing the challenge. And I sat on this idea for a little while before I actually finally just went, you know what, I'm just going to launch it. Just going to do it, right? So it happens to me too. So how do you move past imposter syndrome? All right, I've got my 3 little steps here. Acknowledge the thoughts. Acknowledge them, because one of the biggest issues that blocks us is when we just push the things down and ignore it and push it to the side and go, well, I'm going to keep doing something else and I'll just pretend it doesn't exist, right? So acknowledge the thoughts and ask yourself, when you say, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, this isn't going to work for me, does the thought help or hinder me? Write that down. Does this thought help or hinder me? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a hinder thought, right? You know, when you're telling yourself you can't do something. So you want to reframe that thought, you know, and I know there's a lot of coaches here. Reframe the thought, you know, I can't do this because I don't have a big enough reach. All right, well, the reach that you have, they will get the result out of the challenge, and then they can tell other people about you and help you expand your reach. Okay, so that's no excuse not to do something, right? Because it still goes back to the values. And for the values work that you all did, your golden values and your shadow values, it still goes back and honor those values. Regardless of the size of the scale, it still connects into who you are. So you'd want to do it. So reframe those thoughts. Now, share your thoughts with this. Don't sit and hide and go, oh, I can't tell anyone. I feel like an imposter. I feel like a fraud. I can't do it. Share the thoughts, you know, and I have said previously, get a coach. If you can't move past these things yourself, get a coach. At least go and talk to one of your trusted friends who's going to support you through it. Because I know the women that have signed up for this, and there's been a couple of guys that have signed up as well, so well done, guys. You're amazing, talented women, and we are the ones that get in our own way. 9 times out of 10, we are the ones that are stopping ourselves. So make sure you talk and get the help. And as I was thinking around this last night and this morning, you know, and I didn't have this as an activity, but I really, really want everyone to do this, and I'm going to do this today as well. I want you to list your successes. Write a list. Big successes, small successes, just list them all down. And if you're in the Facebook group, you know, share your top 10 successes. Let us celebrate and acknowledge you. And, you know, think about the things that you had to work through to get there and celebrate those things. Now, with this, I don't want people sitting in the, oh, but I didn't do that and I never took action on that. Because in all of this, I had a reminder. 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I was going to run a course called Bye Bye Good Girl Stories. And I talked about Good Girl Stories the other day. I outlined it, I set it up on Thinkific, and it was all good to go. And then I never launched it. I just left it sitting there like a little guilty, half done. Maybe if somebody asks me about it, I should run it. And I was so excited at the start. So I had the inspired action to get started on building this thing. But then the imposter syndrome, it took over. And in this case, the imposter syndrome won. But guess what? That's okay. I've learned from that. And this is why I'm running this challenge. So we can look at the things that didn't work, but I'd really love us to focus on the things that did. And I'd really love to celebrate you. So list your successes. Now, I Googled who are some of the famous women that we know that have imposter syndrome. Because it's easy to look at the people that are hugely, highly successful and think that they have it all. But guess what? It's a human trait. We all have these thoughts. So here's some famous women who've shared stories about having imposter syndrome. Kate Winslet, Natalie Portman, Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook, Maya Angelou, Arianna Huffington. All of these women who, you know, are considered highly successful, they all still have it as well. So how about we embrace it, look at those thoughts, ask the thought, does it help or hinder me, and get support and help to move through that stuff. Now, if anyone is commenting on the This Chick Means Business Live, I can't see any comments. I am seeing comments showing up on my personal profile, so you can watch the live there as well. You know what, Nadine, it's actually an amazing course, and I've re-outlined it and I've got all the notes saved. So, you know, bye-bye Good Girl Stories, it might get a second coming. So you've got your list of your fears, right? So you just wrote the list of your fears and you put them aside for me. I have a question for you now. You understand imposter syndrome. You understand the fear response. You understand what courage and purpose can look like in your life. And now you can understand how you can shift those to the golden and the shadow values. And when you bring all this together and create that balance point in your life, how you can live a life that is really fulfilled, how does allowing these fears that you have stop you from living to your highest purpose? How do these fears stop you living your life in true, complete fulfillment to your true values? And how are you going to stop it doing that? Does it actually really need to stop you? Because if it's a physical response and a little voice in your head that just is hindering you, but when you really learn to love it, embrace it, and then let it go, there's actually really not that much to stop you. So now we come to the point where we start removing obstacles. And in the day one category, and day 1 and 2, there were some really good shares. So what stops people from speaking up and being visible online? Fear of judgment, fear of family and friends' responses, and feeling like you don't know enough, and just the actual feeling because you don't know what's going to come next. So I think over the 4 days, we've kind of covered all of that stuff off about why it doesn't need to, why you can actually start moving forward. But of course, you know, with me, it's never just like, we'll just do it, because that doesn't work. So there's a couple of things if you're up for the challenge. If you're up for the challenge, if you're ready to go, oh, no worries, Kim. If you are ready to go, here's our next steps. Right. Today's coal day. So you have toxic people on social media. You have people that you're worried about the judgment. You're worried about the fear. Now, this ties back to the good girl stories. You are under no obligation to keep those people on your social media. No obligation. Now, if they're family and you want to stay in touch, leave them on Messenger. They can message you. So here's coal day. Now, there's the, you can unfollow people, and you can do the snooze, and you can do all of those things. But for me, and this is my belief, if you're really worried about people responding to you negatively, hopefully by now you've learned to really embrace who you are and your identity and your integrity, or you're starting to do that. But in the meantime, take them off your social media. If this is something that is truly stopping you from speaking up, take them off. Now you can just take them off, and chances are there's going to be a lot of people that aren't even going to notice that you've taken them off. Because sometimes our ego tells us that we're potentially a lot more popular and a lot more followed than what we would believe. I know with my family, chances are they don't watch the lives that I do. And I've talked about some pretty personal stuff, and no one has said anything. But, you know, if having family and friends on here is stopping you, you're under no obligation to keep them on your social media accounts. None. If there's somebody from school that you accepted a friend's request from, and you're like, oh, I don't know why I've really done this, but there was some sort of sense of politeness, take them off. Take them off. If they're not relevant to who you are now and they're hindering you, get rid of them. So today's social media cull day, and I'm going to be taking a few people off, and it's up to you if you want to let them know why. So I've got some people, some family members that I'm going to send a message to and just say, hey, I love you. I'm taking you off Facebook. These are the reasons why. Reassure them that I'm never going to share their personal stories or anything, but for me to have the freedom to be able to speak about my own life, freedom, free of judgment, free of fear, fear of guilt, shame, and all of those negative feelings, I'm going to take them off. I will let them know. Up to you if you let them know. So how does everyone feel about that? I know it's potentially going to make a few people feel a little bit squeamy in the tummy. And that's okay. This is the feeling of perturbation, right? This is you're ready to have a breakthrough, because when you remove the barriers to your success, There's no excuses, right? And that can be a little bit squishy in the tummy as well. All right, now the next thing I am going to get you to do is a writing activity. And I would put aside, a good half an hour to an hour to do this today. I have done this activity. It's called a liar and a fraud activity, funnily enough. And in doing this activity, I was really able to own my story, own my confidence, and my ability to show up online. So I'll give you an example. So in my first business, I was working with teenagers. And in my 20s, I used to do a lot of drugs. A lot. I used to be a regular party princess. And while there was no social media back then, there was still cameras, and there was people that I'd had falling out with. And there was this underlying fear that they might put a picture up online. I'd previously been bullied by people that had formerly been friends online about my show reels. So I felt really, really uncomfortable. I was really like, what if somebody comes and laughs at me and mocks me? Because I'm here doing the best I can with the skills that I've got. So I wrote this story. I'm a liar and a fraud. And this is how it went. It was a bit more detailed, but this is an overview of how it will look. I'm a liar and a fraud. I put out this public image that I have it all together, that I'm really done really well with all my personal development. I'm running a successful business, but I have this secret. And this secret is back in my 20s, I used to do a lot of drugs. I used to take lots of ecstasy, do lines of speed. I used to go out for 3 or 4 nights in a row. And in the end, I had a breakdown. I had lots of traumatic experiences occur due to this. And I'm absolutely terrified that the parents of the teenagers that I work with will find out and tell me that I'm not fit to work with their kids. And if this happens, this is the end of my whole business. But I've grown from this experience, and I know my experiences in my 20s have actually made me a better facilitator, trainer, and teacher today, that I can work with people around depression and anxiety because of my own experiences. So I wrote this piece, and then I shared it with my mailing list. I was absolutely terrified that people would judge me, be harsh on me, and the overwhelming response was one of positivity. I had parents messaging going, oh, wow, we don't know how to talk to our kids about drugs. Thank you so much. Can you help us? So being able to take your darkest secret, or, you might not want to start with your darkest secret, but something that's bothering you, and sharing that, what it actually 9 times out of 10, yes, you might get some unsubscribes or some people going, well, I don't want to work with you then. But what it actually does, it takes your biggest fear, or it takes this thing that you're worried about people finding out about you, and you get to control the conversation. You're the one that's had the courage to share it. You're the one that's saying, this is who I am, like me or love me, but I'm not ashamed of myself. This is where it's brought me. This is the positive outcome. And all of a sudden, this thing that you're scared that people will find out about you, the weight is lifted. You don't have to pretend anymore. So it's hugely, hugely powerful. Yeah, I was total party princess, Nadine. But in this process, so, a liar and a fraud that I could do is, I feel like a liar and a fraud. I'm sitting here as a business / personal development coach, and I was terrified about running this challenge. I nearly didn't run it. I made myself publicly accountable to get myself over the line to build it, because I didn't know how many people would do it. I didn't know if people would take me seriously. And there was a little voice in my head saying, I'm not good enough to carry this off. Even though I have all the evidence of successful challenges, building courses, coaching people, I can see my current clients just fast tracking, but I still had this doubt. So when somebody has doubt, how can they work with other people on their own? Shouldn't you be 100% confident all the time? What this has shown me is that what I know is actually true. That the whole process of like, you'll never have the belief until you take the action is true. I've taken the action now, and I have more stronger belief in myself and my abilities to be able to work with people in this. But I was afraid to launch this. So what I want you to do with the liar and a fraud is just write it. You don't have to share it today or anything. I just want you to look at that thing, that one thing that is holding you back, that you're worried about people finding out about you. And I want you to write this piece that shows people who you are, shares your vulnerability, and has a positive outcome at the end. So now if you have more questions about this, you can either message the page or post your questions in the Facebook group or post them below on this post. But this process, and I have to thank Leela Cosgrove for teaching me this, changed my life. Because if somebody ever comes to me now and goes, oh, you used to do drugs, I'm like, yeah, I've done Facebook Lives on it, I've talked about it, I've shared it with my former mailing list in my first business, so what? Nobody can control me anymore. And that is one of the most empowering things that I can share with you on this challenge. So I'm glad you're loving this challenge, Nadine. So Kay and anyone who hasn't watched the first 3 days, go back and have a watch. If you register, send me through your email and I'll register you for it, and you get the free courage audio and you'll get access to the bonus coaching day on Saturday. But do these activities, work through them, because I'm constantly told about how brave I am, speaking my mind, speaking my truth, sharing the stories from my past that have been traumatic or hurtful or sad, and being able to share them in an authentic way that is an empowering way. And this is part of being able to be visible online, to set yourself up that the past cannot come back and hurt you, that you're in charge. So I'm going to leave you with that. I'd love you to watch the video that is in today's email. If you didn't get today's email, shoot me through a message. I'll follow it up. Watch the Gina Hatzis email video. Cull your social media list. Write out your liar and a fraud. Just write it out. Don't share it, but just write it. Because once you put things on paper, and once you take them out of here and put them down, and you can step back and look at them, all of a sudden, those things aren't that scary anymore. So I'm going to leave you with that today. That's okay. Okay, sorry you can't make it. Stay tuned for other cool stuff anyway. But yeah, I'd love your feedback, love your thoughts. I'm going to end the lives. I've got a coaching call in half an hour, but I'll be keeping an eye on the social media, popping in and out all day. If you need anything or have any questions, if the liar and a fraud stuff takes you somewhere that is a bit too deep to start with, pick something a little smaller to get started. I've done liar and a fraud on drugs, not feeling good enough, sexual abuse, being bullied, times where I've failed, especially in my first business, leadership. Like, I've written so many of these things. They are awesome. So if you don't feel ready to go too deep straight away, just pick something small to get started and practice the process, because you don't stop with just one if you're smart. Anyway, that's it from me. Whew, that got a little bit deep and heavy, didn't it? We'll just shake that out. Remember to review your values. Keep touching it in with your purpose. If things get a little shaky, just remember your why. And I've had this quote. I want to leave you with this quote about why all of this is important. In the heat of the battle, you don't rise to the top. The cream doesn't rise to the top in the heat of the battle. What happens in moments of pressure, you sink to the level of your training. And this is why we need to understand what perturbation is and understand our values and our purpose and get our ego out of our way, because you sink to the level of your training. So keep working on this stuff and I'll see you tomorrow for day 5 if I don't see you sooner in the group. Okay, bye.